Most days, it's gonna look something like this. But if we wanted to, we could do this. I like this option. Or I could do something like this with all my friends. So now that we finally have the covered patio done, I figured we needed a place to sit. So I wanted to build some patio furniture that helped save us a little bit of money, kind of followed the theme that we have going around out here, was actually something comfortable to sit on. And then because we really didn't 100% know the layout and what we wanted, I wanted to build something that was modular that we could take apart, move around, and change for whatever we wanted out here.
This being outdoor furniture, I'm building mine out of cedar. These are 2x4x10s. The 10-foot lengths help me minimize waste. The cedar helps with rot resistance. I mean, you can see these are looking pretty rough. I ended up buying rough cut ones rather than S4S, only because the grain pattern and color on these looked so much better. Using the rough cut lumber definitely added a whole lot of work to this project for me. I had to run each one of these boards through the planer 2 times on each side, for a total of 4 times for each board going through that planer. That got me down to the 1.5 inch thickness that I wanted. These rough cut ones were almost 2 inches thick when I first bought them. And that process not only took a whole lot of time, it made a whole lot of chips. Then using my cut list, I rough cut all my lumber down to size, about 1 inch or 2 inches longer than the actual pieces are going to be in the end. This makes handling the material a whole lot easier, plus it's going to make the next step that I have to do a little bit more precise. I tried to cut as many pieces all at one time as I could, save myself some time later. Here you can see all the parts for either a left or right hand side. The cool thing was a 10-foot 2x4 made a complete left or right side, like I have the example on the right. After cutting a ton of boards to size, I needed to do something about the edges. I needed to get these square and to be the correct width. Since I don't have a jointer at home, I'm doing the next best thing that I can, and I'm running all these through the table saw. Having these at the rough cut lengths makes this project so much easier, and what I'm doing here is finding the best side of the board and putting it against the fence of the table saw, running every single piece through once, getting one good side, then coming back, turning the board over to the other side, setting it to the desired measurement of 3.5 inches wide, and I'm running all the boards through there again on the other side so that we have 2 good edges that are perpendicular to each other. Yet again, a jointer would be better and get the most accurate results, but for what I have, this is the best that I could do. And if I'm being honest with you, for outdoor patio furniture like this is going to be perfectly fine. Finally, it was time to cut the boards down to their exact lengths. And what we're looking at here is the pile on the left is one complete 2x4 that is going to make, say, the left-hand side. And then the pile on the right over there is one complete 2x4 that is going to make the right-hand side. So what I'm doing is picking out the best side of each board, and I'm facing those outwards. I'm going to put these two together, cut them both at the same time. Not only does it speed up the process, but when I measure these out and cut them together, they're going to be exactly the same length, hopefully increasing the accuracy later. The nice thing about doing it this way is that the left-hand side of the chair should look identical and be consistent because it all came out of one board, and same thing for the right-hand side. And then we're going to keep both of these in one pile, and they will make one chair. And then I purposely tried to pick boards that looked close together to make a left and a right side, so that the left and the right side for each chair looks very similar. To attach all the side pieces together, I ended up going with lap joints. I made these using the dado set you can see there on my table saw. To make these, I ended up marking them out, and sometimes, like with the 90-degree ones, they were as simple as just laying another 2x4 over top of it and marking out where those laps were going to be. Then using a square, I put lines on all edges of the 2x4. You really don't have to do these, but these are visual lines, just so when I'm lining up each board, I can double check myself and make sure that I'm on target and where I want them to be. Because I had so many of these to do, I wasn't about to take multiple passes, so I'm taking the full 3/4 of an inch of this board off, all in one pass. You did have to make sure that you were going slow on your way out, because this being such a soft wood, it was really prone to splintering on the back side. I will admit the first few lap joints that I did didn't look 100% perfect. They looked good, and they still came together pretty well, as you can see here. But to get them to look a little bit better, I did go back and adjust the throat plate on this, lowered it down a little bit, and we got a little bit better. Also, the miter gauge that I'm working with here isn't exactly the most accurate, but they did get the job done. And then you can see here that I'm finishing up all the 90-degree lap joints before I start getting into the angled ones. Marking out the angled lap joints was a little bit more fun. I put the boards from the left and the right side together, and then I marked these on opposite sides. I marked both the entry and the exit point for both sets of lap joints. One kind of quick thing to note about the way that I'm building my chairs is that they're mirrored. So they're equal but opposite. So the parts on the left side and the right side are exactly the same, but they're opposites. So that created a little bit more work, but I think it's going to look better in the end. Then I did all of the lap joints at one angle for one side of all of the chairs. Then I flipped everything over and did the other side. Doing one set of angles at a time just made things a little bit more repeatable. By this time, we had quite a few parts. We had all the pieces for the left and right sides here in the middle. We had the middle connectors there in the back. I had parts for armrests and the ottoman all cut and ready to go for assembly. To get the assembly process started, I'm assembling all of the left and right sides individually. I'm just down here on my garage floor with some paper laid out and every clamp that I could possibly find. Here I'm applying probably way too much glue to each one of these lap joints. I'm putting it on every face on both sides and the edges, and I'm using Type Bond 3. This is the outdoor water-rated glue. I'll be honest with you, I pretty much use it on everything. It just works really well, and I've had good luck with it. After I have all the surfaces glued, put the pieces back together, and then I put a quick grip clamp to put some pressure on there, try to force some of that glue out of there and hold it tight. After I have everything clamped in tight and I've tried to wipe off as much glue as I could, I did take a square and try to make sure that the front of these chairs were as square as possible. Then I'm going to go ahead and screw these together from the inside. These are just an outdoor deck screw. They're 1.25 inches long. All these fasteners are on the inside, so you're not going to be able to see them very well once the chairs are fully put together. And these are probably what's really going to help hold these together and clamp these together better than those quick grip clamps while that glue dries. In between gluing, I took the connectors for the chairs and anything else that I could and started drilling pocket hole screws in these. These boards are the pieces that are going to connect the left and the right hand sides of the chairs together, and each one of these is getting 2 pocket hole screws on each side for a total of 4 in each board. With 6 of these in each chair, and then more for the ottoman and more for the corner, there were a lot of these boards, and at 4 holes apiece, there was a lot of drilling. This is the point where I really wish I would have bought that Craig Foreman that really cranks out the pocket holes. To assemble the chairs, I started off with one side flat on the workbench, and then I attempted to put in the 3 main middle connectors. As you can see when I was doing this, I had one of those pocket hole screws run into one of the screws that I had originally connecting the lap joints together. Not a big deal, just took out that one screw. At this point, those screws probably aren't even doing a whole lot now that that glue is dry. Then I continued to put in the back connector and the bottom connector. Once the 3 main pieces were connected to the one side, I then flipped the chair up and put the other side on. I connected each one of these main connectors with just one pocket hole screw to the second side. And then I was setting this on my flat workbench so that I could kind of rack things around or move things around to make sure that the bottom rails of each one of these sides was sitting flat as possible. Once I knew everything was good, then I went around and put the second screw in each one, and they came out all pretty good. Before I could attach the middle connectors for the back support, I had to go ahead and rip the top one at a 13-degree angle on the table saw. This matches the angle of the 2 vertical pieces when installed. Then with the chair back on the floor, I'm putting in the back supports. The top one goes in first, the one that just got ripped down, and you can see it meets the top pretty well, really nice and flush. Then the middle one goes in, and I'm just using kind of a spacer block to keep it at an equal distance. Then if you look close, down there at the bottom, I put in the chair pad support, same way, 2 pocket hole screws on either side. Before going any further, I figured I decided to test this out, so I just threw a chair pad on here real quick and a board across the bottom so that I didn't fall through. And everything felt pretty good. So the assembly process of these chairs went pretty darn fast, and as I was building them, I was kind of laying them out in our desired orientation, and this is the point where we realized we probably wanted another chair. But we kept moving forward and started making the corner. The corner is made up of a left and a right side, just like the chairs, and I kind of took the easy way out here. All I did was cut off 1.5 inches of the left-hand side of one of these so that these two could butt together and still keep the same dimensions as the chairs. I could have mitered that corner, but I ended up going this route, and then I screwed these together using pocket hole screws. After that, I created the center corner support. You can see I'm just attaching this with screws right now, but I did come back later and glue it once I knew it was going to work. But this goes right in the center, and then I attached it using a pocket hole screw on the top edge and the bottom edge to that center corner there. The back cushion support was kind of a unique piece here. It's just 2 2x4s that are attached by pocket hole screws, but they have to fit in and attach that back corner support at an angle. To do this, I had to cut this at a 45-degree angle at a compound cut. And the sparks you see here are just me cutting through one of the pocket hole screws that was attaching the 2 boards together. I ended up cutting this multiple times to get the correct angle and get the correct fitment, but once I got that correct fitment and it sat down against that back corner support really well, screwed it in on either side with 2 pocket hole screws, and then just 2 decking screws right through the corner into that corner support from the inside. Back at the miter saw, we're making more compound cuts, and it's not every day that I get to make a bunch of compound cuts, so this was fun, but definitely the most challenging part of this whole thing. So these are cut at an angle and a bevel at the same time so that the angle of the board can meet and match not only the angle that it was on, but the piece that it's connecting to at that back corner support. One recommendation that I do have is do all of one side at the same time if you're going to do something like this. That way that the miter saw doesn't have to keep getting shifted back and forth from side to side. And I'll be honest with you, these didn't come out 100% perfect. I mean, I have the CAD drawing with the exact measurements and angles that it needs to be, but building something out of wood like this in the real world, being off 0.5 degree makes a big difference. So I was doing a whole lot of cutting, checking, recutting, checking, sneaking up on that measurement in hopes to make these look as good as possible. And in the end, they actually came out pretty good for what they were. And with a little sanding, they ended up looking great. And all these got installed with 2 pocket hole screws on either side, just like all the other pieces. After completing the corner, the ottoman was a breeze. This is probably the easiest thing we did the entire time. Both sides were glued up just like the sides of the chairs. I connected the main middle 3 connectors, yet again, just like the chairs. Put in one of the pocket hole screws on each piece, really clamped it and kind of forced it down onto the workbench to make sure that it was straight. Put in the middle connectors, yet again, more pocket hole screws, and that thing was done. Armrests were the last thing that I had to assemble, and these look a little bit different than the ones in the final product, and they were the last thing that I ended up doing because I wasn't 100% sure how I wanted these to work. Originally, when I was looking at it, I thought I was going to just attach the armrest to 2 chairs. I was going to have 2 chairs that were permanently had armrests on them. And in thinking with the completely modular thing, I decided to go a different route so that you can see that there's a board missing in the center of these. And you'll see how that plays out later, but they ended up going together the same exact way as the corner sides, the chair sides, the ottoman sides. They were pre-cut lap joints, clamps on each corner, yet again 3 screws from the inside, 1.25 inch screws to hold everything together, same way that I did pretty much everything else. Then with everything assembled and put together, I took these outside for probably one of the most important steps, and everybody's favorite, sanding. Here I'm just using a palm sander with 120 grit paper. Going anything more than 120 grit I don't think is worth it. This being outdoor patio furniture and using a softwood like cedar like this, I don't think doing anything more than 120 is you're really going to see any benefits from. I'm just trying to sand here all of the faces, high touch areas, kind of knock off some of the corners and sharp edges so that we can prevent splintering and make these feel as quality as possible. Most of the chairs, a palm sander is all we needed, but in case I missed any glue drips or runs or anything like that, coming back with a chisel and getting rid of those big glue drips with a chisel saves a whole lot of time than grinding away with it with a palm sander. Then every once in a while I had something a little bit heavier than I use the belt sander for. But really a palm sander and a little bit of time is all it took. To finish these, I'm using the same clear satin spar urethane that I used for the columns and the beams when I built the patio. I really like the finish and the way that these came out. This stuff is easy to apply with a brush, and I probably could have done 2 coats. I ended up just doing 1 with the amount of time that this stuff took. I've really been impressed with this product so far, and the big thing with these cedar boards, now we're starting to see why I chose the rough cedar boards and planed them down, because I really like some of this red that we got from those boards, and this spar urethane really brings out that red color and kind of brightens these things up. And I love the way that this finish ends up bringing out that true color of the wood. Then on the bottom of these, I screwed in these little rubbery plastic feet to keep them up off the ground. Keeps them off the porous concrete or any standing water. The other thing is it keeps the bottom of the chairs from being scraped along the concrete and jacking up the bottom of these things. The other thing is it was kind of like a little cheat code. If the chair didn't sit 100% flat on the ground, you could throw like a washer or 2 underneath it and lift that one side or one corner of the chair up, so then it sat perfectly flat on the ground. So what really makes these chairs modular is the flush mount brackets that are mounted on each side of the chair. So to mount those brackets, I use this jig to mark out all the hole locations for the brackets. I started off on the left-hand side and marked out all those, then flipped it over to the right-hand side and marked all the same hole locations on that chair. Then using a drill and a slightly smaller drill bit than the screws that I'm going to be using, I drilled pilot holes for each one of those brackets. The important thing to note here is on the chair on the right-hand side, that's going to act as the bottom bracket, as I'm calling it. And I'm mounting the bottom bracket about 1/8 of an inch lower. So when I'm drilling all these holes on the right-hand side chair, I'm drawing them at the bottom of the hole that I marked out, roughly 1/8 of an inch lower, so that the top bracket from the other chair is going to slide into it. And even if the chairs aren't 100% level on the ground together, it's going to give them the clearance they need. After I had all the holes drilled, I laid out the brackets and screwed them in with the screws provided. Here you can see how the brackets actually interact with each other. They slide on and fit together pretty nice. They have enough clearance to where it's easy to hook them and unhook them, but they also kind of hold tight enough to where if you really try to pull these things around, they stay pretty still. So the last part of assembly was something that I'd never done before, but I definitely wanted to try to help make these a little bit more comfortable. So instead of using 2x4s or something else to help support that bottom cushion, I used this webbing material. This is an outdoor rated webbing material that I found on Amazon, and it was pretty easy to install. After marking out the distance for the first one, I just held that first piece in place with a little left over. Then I put 5 to 7 staples, kind of in an alternating pattern back and forth, not in a straight line, to kind of hold it in place. Then I folded that extra over and put 3 more staples on top of it to cover that edge. Then I just stretched it pretty darn tight on the other side, and I know that they make a proper tool that you can stretch this with, but honestly just stretching it and then putting 5 to 7 more staples in it, held it in place, cut the extra off, folded it over, put 3 more staples in, and I repeated that step 4 more times so that I had a total of 5 going front to back. Then I repeated that same process going in the opposite direction. The only thing different here was that I weaved it under and over and under and over until I got to that other side. Yet again, stretching it tight, pulling it tight, stapling it in place, and repeated that 4 more times, alternating which side was up and down. And in the end, it didn't take that long, and I was pretty impressed.
So it's about 2 to 3 weeks later now, and we've had a really good opportunity to use these, and I think the dog's probably the one that's used them the most. But overall, we're really pleased with this, and there's not a whole lot that I would have done differently, but I do want to give you a quick rundown on kind of why I made some of the decisions that I did, how this kind of thing went together, and maybe a quick price breakdown of what something like this would cost. The first big thing that I want to talk about is this thing being modular. It's not 100% modular, but it's like 98% modular. And almost every single piece can be taken apart and is interchangeable with every other chair, armrest, whatever. Everything comes apart, even the armrests. So I alluded to earlier that I changed the armrest design. Originally, I was just going to screw the armrest directly to the side of the chair, and I was going to have 2 chairs that had armrests permanently on them. But thinking about it and kind of really going through it, I really wanted to make this as modular and interchangeable as possible. So I decided to attach the armrest with a third board down there and then put brackets on it as well. So if you take a look at the armrest, it will move around a little bit and you can kind of hear it rattle a little bit, but it's not going anywhere. Like if you put pressure on it or something on there, it's still attached. But because there is a little bit of play in those brackets, it does move around a little bit. It hasn't bothered us at all. Actually, it's kind of really nice how easy this armrest comes off and then reattaches back on. But that was a design change that I made later, and I'm really happy that I did it. Now, the reason that I say that this is about 98% modular is because on the other side, on the left-hand side, I guess you would call it chair over there, I had to remount the brackets in the opposite direction. So the brackets on both sides of that chair are facing the same direction. So that chair on the other side can only be in that position. It starts off everything because the brackets sit down into the other ones, and I needed to flip the brackets around so that the armrest would be on there. So there's one chair that I have that can only go in one location, but other than that, everything else is interchangeable. The next big thing that I wanted to talk about was the cushion itself. So my entire patio furniture is designed around this cushion. I believe it's roughly 25 by 25 by 5 inches tall, and everything that I did was designed around this cushion. I bought the cushions first and actually saved a decent amount of money. I bought these at Lowe's in the fall, right before they were getting out the holiday decorations and stuff like that for winter, and they wanted to get rid of all of this kind of stuff out of their store. They weren't discontinued or anything like that. I could go out and buy more of these this year, I believe. I looked at them. I bought just enough, so I don't quote me on that one. But I think you can go out and I could buy more of these, and I could build more chairs and cushions, or more chairs and corners and all kinds of stuff like that if I wanted to. But they were just trying to get rid of these. So if you're looking to do something like this, looking for the cushions in the fall before you build the project next spring is something that you may want to do. That being said, my entire patio furniture was built around this cushion. My recommendation, buy the cushion first, build the chair around the cushion, don't do it the opposite way where you build the chair and then you're trying to make a cushion that fits, unless you want to build something custom and do that kind of yourself. If we remove the cushion, you can see probably the best decision that I made about this patio furniture, bar none, and that's this webbing. I wouldn't say that this webbing is difficult. It's actually a pretty darn easy thing to do, but me being a woodworker, builder person, I like building things. I've never done a chair webbing something like this before, but this was the best decision that I made. Because if you compare this to something like the ottoman over there, where it has 2x4s running across, that has 0 flex, 0 move. But when you sit down on this, it flexes. It feels quality. It's just more comfortable. I love it. That was definitely something that I would do again. Something definitely I'm happy that we did this time. And then another design feature that I want to kind of show you here is these horizontal back support pieces that hold the back cushion of the chair that support your back. I elected to put these at the back of the angled support here. This angled support here is 13 degrees. That's something that I measured off of a chair that was sitting at Lowe's. And I went with that angle, and when I built my test chair, I ended up putting these 2x4s at the front, and I felt like I was sitting too far forward. And then the cushions always had a tendency to fall forward. And so then moving this backwards to the back of this 2x4, it seems like these cushions sit down in there a little bit, and you have this kind of ledge on either side that helps hold that cushion in place, and then it reclines you back a little bit, and I felt like that worked out a little bit better for me. I don't know long term whether I'll like that or not, because you do get kind of this wooden chunk right here that, like, if your kid comes diving in, I don't know what my son's going to do here. If he comes diving in and his head goes in between the cushions, smacks on that, it's not going to be a great thing. But that'll be a long-term thing that I'll figure out. I don't know if that's a good thing yet or not, but I wanted to explain that and show you. Also, there's a horizontal piece down here at the bottom. This is something that I didn't show crazy, in detail in the video, but the reason that I put this one in here was to keep the cushion, or help the cushion from sliding out the back. You really don't need it because it hits on the two edge boards, but something I put in there, and it is what it is. Then on these boards, you can see that I have open pocket hole screws. Call me lazy, I didn't plug them, but I'll be honest with you, once you put the cushion on there, you never see them, so why do you need to fill them? I mean, I might go back and fill them and sand them and stain them and stuff like that. I definitely wanted them on the inside rather than on this back side here, because these never get the opportunity to be covered. But if your cushions are in the place that they're supposed to be, you never see them anyway. And then we have the ottoman, and I'll be honest with you, really the only reason I built the ottoman was because we had a leftover cushion. When you make the corner piece back there, you have to have two back pieces, but you only have one bottom seat cushion. So I had one of these left over, and an ottoman seemed like a perfect way to do that. I'll be honest with you, I love this thing. There was no need to put the webbing on this. I don't think your feet need to have that much cushion. Plus, it kind of makes a nice step stool or something. If you need something out here to stand on, you take the cushion off and you have a nice step stool. But I'll be honest with you, if I was doing this again, or maybe here in the future, I might build another one or two of these because they're really nice to have and put your feet up on. All right, so next I should probably actually show you the modular part of these and kind of explain a little bit more how that goes. Obviously, the ottoman is completely modular. It is not attached to anything. It doesn't have any brackets. It moves completely free and it doesn't attach to anything. The 98% modular part comes from this piece here. Like I said, I had to switch the brackets on, so only this chair here will accept this armrest, and no other chair can clip into this side of it because the brackets are in the opposite direction. So the way this ends up working is this chair always has to be your far left chair. You always start with this chair, you put this one in place first, and then you clip every other chair into that side of it, getting to the corner the way that I have it set, and go all the way this way. Just to show you how easy this is, I'll kind of take one or two of these chairs off of here and show you how easy it is to unclip these and kind of reclip these back in. The hardest part about this is navigating the cushion. Built out of cedar, these chairs really aren't that heavy, but you can see that they just unclip pretty easy, like so. I will admit, when I'm lining them back up, I do take the cushion off so that I can get over top of it, and it's a good idea to move the other cushion, and you just line up the three hinges and slide it back on, and that one's clipped back into place. So very easily, they just drop in and lock into place, and they're pretty darn sturdy where they're at and how they lock in. So I will be honest with you, we haven't had the opportunity yet to use them for a long enough period of time where we've moved them around in a ton of different orientations. It's pretty much stayed like this for now, but I love the option that we have moving forward to make really any different orientation of chair that we want. So then probably one of the last and most important questions that you may want to know is, how much does something like this cost? And that's kind of a hard question to answer. It cost me about $750 to $800, somewhere in there, to build all this. Granted, I bought the cushions half off, like I said, in the late fall. The year before that I actually wanted to build this, so that was a big cost savings, but I did build it all out of cedar, so that added a little bit more to the cost. If you built it out of something like Douglas fir and stained it really well and kept it covered like this, I think that would be completely fine. If you build it out of pressure treated lumber, that would make this definitely a little bit cheaper as well, depending on how many different chairs you build. I have 7 chairs, a corner, an ottoman, and 2 armrests, so there's quite a bit of stuff here, although I may end up building maybe another corner and another few chairs to make a cool U shape here. I don't know, that could add to the cost. But considering what I paid for what I have here, this meets my needs perfectly. It is as comfy as anything that I've sat on in the store. I love the way that it looks. I really, really do like this, and I think for what I paid, we have a great bargain kind of value here with this. Now, if you compare it to some of the stuff out there, yeah, you can buy a pretty nice set of patio furniture for $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. So when you look at it that way, I saved, you know, a decent amount of money. But when you start talking about modular furniture, and I realize that I'm comparing apples to oranges with this one, but if you look at some of those modular furniture companies out there that that sell stuff like this at this size range, I was looking at $5,000, $8,000, upwards of $10,000 for patio furniture that did this, where you could take the pieces apart, you could rearrange them and make them into different sectionals and couches and different things like that. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is at the same level as that stuff, but it does the same thing for me, and it feels just as comfy to me. So in that realm, maybe I saved a whole heck of a lot of money. This is what I came up with. I would love to see what you guys have to say in the comments down below, any questions that you have. If you're looking to build something like this, I will make plans available for it. I was searching through YouTube and the internet to see what other people have built, and I was inspired by some stuff that other people built, but nobody had a set of plans out there for me. And so I kind of designed this whole thing myself by measuring other patio furniture, and I figured I had everything to make the set of plans, so I'll put them out there for you in case you're looking to do a little bit more research or you want to know kind of the technical specs of what I've got going here. I will admit it's my first set of plans, so it's not a step-by-step walkthrough guide, but it will give you all the measurements and dimensions and stuff that you need if you wanted to know what size and shape that I made this and kind of roughly how to do it. But I hope you give this a thumbs up. I hope to see you guys subscribing, and I hope to see you guys in another video.